Mom, I saw Dylan's dad make dinner. Like, actually cook, and it was straight fire. He said it was Blue Apron Assemble and Bake. All the ingredients showed up pre-chopped, and he just laid it out on a baking sheet, and no cap. Dinner was on the table in like 25 minutes. Apparently, it's chef designed, and it has like over 40 grams of protein. That's a lot, right? So maybe we try it. Just saying. You can be the next Dylan's dad. Blue Apron. Get $50 off your first 2 orders plus free shipping with code STIR50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
How are you?
Well, I think we are the underdogs in most of these games these days. Have you seen our form at the moment?
I heard a joke that @Brigley3 sent me on Twitter saying United are planning to change their name to Port Talbot because they're sitting between Cardiff and Swansea. One for all you Welsh geography fans there.
Oh, niche. There's another way of looking at this. David Moyes has spent 10 years trying to make Everton better than United. He's finally managed it.
Yeah, it was funny watching Everton on Monday night. I was sort of watching it, chuckling to myself about how, and it's very early days, this is not Moyes out, just saying, David Moyes has managed to completely ruin us in the space of a month, and Martinez has managed to take his clod-hopping Everton side and turn them into tiki-taka Barcelona-esque masters.
It's funny, I mean, it's just a brilliant case study in how much a manager matters. Ferguson's been in the press a lot this week, unfortunately spending a lot of time praising the Glazers, you know. He's still on the Glazer coin, so I suppose we can expect it. He used to say that the manager was the most important man in the club, and you kind of get the feeling that he's probably right about that. You know, the case study in how United are playing and how Everton are playing now is a very pointed one.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredibly early days for both of those sides. Some people, I was having a discussion on Twitter with somebody who was talking about how, well, you know, Everton have got better players than they did have last season. I'm like, well, that's because they had a different manager in the transfer window overseeing the transfers in and out of the club. So don't think you can ignore Moyes' culpability in that too. It's going to be a pretty heavy on the David Moyes is not doing a particularly good job of being Manchester United manager yet show this week, but I think that's only appropriate given the results. None of this is about knee-jerk reactions to his long-term future. This is all just about, this is what's going on at the moment, and this is what we think about it. So, Ed, what do you think about the game against West Brom?
I think McCarthy and Barkley in the Everton midfield are way better than Fellaini and Carrick. No, sorry. I just couldn't, I had to get that one out. Barkley, can we send Fellaini back with a credit note and just swap them or something? We might have to put a bit of cash in there as well.
Against West Brom, of course, it wasn't even Fellaini and Carrick. It was the indefatigable Anderson and Carrick partnership. It's been so effective so many times for Man United.
Yeah. Anderson, still waiting, aren't we, for him to have his year. Will it be this year? No. The thing is, you know it's Anderson's time is up when even his most ardent supporters are no longer saying it could be his this year. It's because they've finally forgotten the 2 good games he had against Arsenal in, 1987.
Yeah, a very, very peculiar team selection. The one thing that I think is probably...
Which game are we talking about here? The Shaktar game or the West Brom game?
No, the West Brom game. I think there's a lot of logic in the Shaktar selection, but the West Brom selection was a manager who is not used to very heavy squad rotation, practising his very heavy squad rotation. Too many changes, too much trust in the squad players sort of thing. I think the particularly odd decision was to play Büttner again, because Büttner did not have a terrible game against Liverpool, but he was very culpable defensively quite a few times. And if there's anyone you bring back when you're playing your full strength squad, it's Evra, right?
Well, quite, yes. He's clearly made a decision to give Evra more rests than is normal, and that's fair enough. Evra is now 32, and Moyes is not fully confident in Evra either, clearly, because he bid for Baines and Coentrao in the summer. So you can understand, but Büttner is of such poor quality defensively that it's going to cost United. You know, he's just a bizarre player. He's clearly not a left-back, right? He's a kind of middling winger happening to be playing for United in the Premier League in a crucial game against a decent side. So, hey, It's slightly odd. You asked at the top of that section about what did I think about the West Brom game, and I haven't quite answered that one. It was terrible, and it was terrible mostly because United defended in the most shocking fashion. And it's just all wrong. It's all wrong. The fullbacks were all in the wrong place. The centre two in midfield weren't covering them in the way they should. The central defenders had a nightmare. Poor old Rio, if he was a horse, you'd shoot him. So it just wasn't good as a whole unit defensively, and United couldn't do enough going forward to make up for it.
What do you make of the Rio situation in general, Ed?
He had such a good season last year. Defensively, he was very, very sound. He played a lot of games. He didn't get a lot of injuries. They rested him at the right time. But he played in the opening, 6 games of the season, and it was clearly too much for him, and it seems to have taken its toll in the last 2 games. He didn't play against Shaktar. At no point was he going to, although apparently he has a little bit of a groin problem as well. I wondered whether it was his pride, given the roasting he's had in 2 Premier League games in a row. I hope that this is not the beginning of the end, although, of course, logically, him being 34 and 35 this season, it is the beginning of the end.
Well, it's sort of not even the beginning of the end, really, is it? It's like the middle of the end, because at the beginning of last season he was really struggling, then he came back excellently. But that initial struggle was part of the decline process, The physical decline has long since set in, although he's also an incredible sort of physical specimen. But in terms of pace and the energy of youth, that's gone. The problem is he's now seems to be having real concentration issues again. And he was pretty dreadful against West Brom. I mentioned Butner early in that game, but it's kind of unfair to single him out. It was just, in a way, that the selection of him and Anderson were the 2 strangest things about the team selection. None of the experienced players did their job properly in that game, did they? No,
Michael Carrick had a shocker too.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, a real shocker, and that's a couple in a row for him as well. So it was really poor all round. I thought a bad day at the office for Moyes with some strange selection, a bad day for many of United's players again. Even odd half-time substitutions, pulled off Shinji Kagawa. Everyone likes to see Januzaj at the moment, of course, because he's exciting and he adds a lot. He's clearly going to be a top player, but it was kind of odd to pick Kagawa out of position and haul him off at half-time. And nothing worked for United at all.
I mean, I think it's beyond odd, actually, and I have to say the way Moyes is handling Kagawa is the thing I'm enjoying least about the Moyes regime. And as I said before, this is not about suddenly believing Shinji to be Diego Maradona or anything. This is about the fact that if a team was built around that guy, it would be a beautiful team to watch. His cross for Anderson in that first half, shame that the second part of that is for Anderson, when Anderson crossed against the bar and then launched one into row double Z off the rebound. But that cross from Kagawa was absolutely perfect. It was, without exaggeration, one of the most aesthetically pleasing crosses I've ever seen in my life. And to take a player off at half-time who's really struggling for confidence, and we're really struggling in the game, and you bring on Adnan, and I just think if you'd made that substitution after 65 minutes, it would have had the same effect, except without all the detriment that goes with it. And then that was followed up by the Shakhtar game. I was kind of dreading it, seeing the team sheet. It looked like Fellaini might be playing as a second striker, but he actually wasn't until the second half. But still not a whiff of Shinji playing at number 10. And that's it, right? It's just not going to happen. Moyes is just not going to incorporate Kagawa in a serious way into this side, and he'll be off soon, right? That's what's happening.
Yes, for sure. Look, Moyes will not play him at number 10. He won't. He could have played him at number 10 against Shakhtar and didn't. He simply won't. Kagawa will be competing with 3 or 4 other players for a position in a wide role, and it's not going to suit him. We're not going to get the best out of him, and I would think next summer he'll head back to the Bundesliga where he's respected. And it's a real shame because we're not going to get enough out of this player who's got bags and bags of talent. Not in highest echelons of the world game yet, but you wonder whether if he'd been playing every week in the role that he should be playing in, whether he'd grow. We'll never find out, I don't think. I just don't think Moyes rates or trusts him. If he did, he'd give him the opportunity in the correct position, and he won't.
Yeah, and it's really just unfortunate. And the whole thing has just got a kind of bad taste. Apart from the playing Adnan, which is kind of exciting, the rest of the way Moyes is making United play is just not any fun. And so be it. This is where we're at now. I suspect it's not going to be where we're at for the long term with Moyes, because if he keeps just being conservative all the time, he isn't going to last. And I'm not talking about this season or next season, but the season after that. If he hasn't got us being some sort of uber functional, relentless winning machine type of side, then if he's playing boring football and not getting results, I mean, this is speculation for the long term, but,
Look, I know what you're saying, of course. If United are playing boring football in a Jose Mourinho style boring football, and a machine that's rolling sides over and United winning all the time, I don't think anyone's going to fuss. It's a shame, because I'm the kind of fan who really wants to see United playing in the United way, attacking, creative, exciting football. It doesn't mean that that's some a copy of tiki-taka or a copy of Barcelona's model or a copy of Bayern Munich's model now, or a copy of the Borussia model in the United way, playing lots of attacking players and playing creative football. That's kind of what I've grown up on. I'm old enough that I remember when United weren't very good, but for the last 20-odd years we've had loads of fantastic attacking sides. Not at the moment. And Moyes likes his teams to play quite functionally, likes them to play from back to front. It's a shame how many hit-and-hope balls that United are playing out of central defence at the moment. There's not much movement. They are very static through midfield. And, we talked at the top of this show about how the manager impacts on the style that a team plays. Clearly he does, and he has. That was kind of shown in his major purchase this summer. I'm afraid this is it. It's not suddenly going to be playing great football. The best we can hope is that he pulls it together and United start playing very good functional football, as you say.
I tell you who I've been feeling a bit sorry for. It's kind of ridiculous to feel sorry for multi-millionaire footballers with a blissful, joyous family life and, all that. But the player that I'm looking at and thinking, this is not what he signed up for, is Robin. His body language is definitely not right. Definitely. I don't know much about football, but I know a lot about body language, and there is...
Well, he's probably thinking, how many goals would he score if Mesut Ozil was playing just behind him?
Yeah.
Sorry to say, but I can say this because I have a track record of saying what a fantastic player this guy was, and I was clearly very disappointed when United didn't pull the stops out to sign him 3 years ago. And we talked just after the transfer window closed about how one player can be a catalyst. And we don't know how Arsenal's season will finish, but he has been a catalyst for sure. He's getting everyone around him to play another couple of levels above themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. As Robin did when he arrived at United. But, he didn't sign up for David Moyes football. He came to play for Fergie and got one season, and obviously, he loved it, and it was a fulfilment of a lifelong dream. I think... you said, I think it was last week, you said that the only way that Moyes can go this season is if he totally loses the dressing room. And obviously we're not speculating that he's totally lost the dressing room, because that would be so super far-fetched. But I think there are some things that he's doing which are, this isn't a knee-jerk response. This is a considered response to the situation. I think he's taking risks with his relationship with those players through both his style and, more specifically, what he's saying in the press. Because I think he's playing a really dangerous game. And I sent you an email this week saying that I thought the piece that you wrote about Moyes' PR was the best thing you'd written for ages, and you sent me one back going, normally you're a rubbish writer, but this one's alright. But that's not what I meant at all. I think that's a really excellent piece, and for those of you who've not read it, I wonder if you could just sum up a little bit about what you're thinking about that stuff.
Yeah, so I headlined it, Moyes Gaff Pro Neurotrash, and it was sparked from 3 interviews he's done recently. One being about the Champions League, and he said to win the Champions League you need 5 or 6 world-class players, and we don't have that. Went on to talk about Barcelona and Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, and it just struck me as remarkably defeatist and not the kind of attitude that's going to spur on his players to greatness at all. Really, really, really odd. You keep it to yourself, that kind of thing, and you work your way in the transfer market to fix it if you think that's the problem. I kind of thought maybe that was a message to the Glazers, but, we'll see. And then there was the interview before the Liverpool game where he said that it wasn't about United's quality that won the title last season, it's because other teams were poor, and that's the verbatim quote. And I thought that was astonishing, to be honest. And it gives the sense that Moyes isn't quite in control of himself, and to go alongside Ferguson effectively anointing him and this thing around him being the chosen one, it makes it feel as if he's not really got a hold of himself in the role yet. He's not fully confident about it. And this is coming out in his statements in the press. And I think it's pretty worrying, because one of the things that you get from that is that you will lose respect of the players you're managing, right? For sure, being defeatist in that manner. It's just a little bit Roy Hodgson. Even worse, it's just a little bit Rafa Benitez as well, and I don't think any of those two things are becoming of a Manchester United manager. Interesting piece in the Daily Telegraph while we're talking about the written world here. I'm not normally a massive fan of Henry Winter because his writing style is on the pompous side, but there you go. He is entertaining. I love him. He made exactly this point. He said Moyes hasn't grown into the job yet, and he needs to start being himself, and he needs to start being the leader that he was at Everton. I think people could respect that. So he changed all the coaching staff. I wonder whether he needs to think about making some radical changes in the team as well. If he wants to go all the way, and he doesn't believe United have got the players to win the Champions League this season, then you might as well start the transition quite early and start thinking about the players he really wants, but start introducing some of the younger players. I get the feeling that he's stuck in a halfway house at the moment. It's not going to do him well in the long run.
No, absolutely. I think that's quite an astute point, actually. The changes in the backroom staff were obviously a bit cataclysmic. Those are big changes. I'm sure that's having some effect on the players. We must not forget to come on to Too Many Tacos Gate later in the show, talking of staff changes. First of all, I think the 5 or 6 world-class players comment is nonsense, and it's a completely facetious comment. Chelsea won the Champions League 2 years ago. It's a knockout competition. Quite often the best team in Europe wins it, but very often also they don't. So it's facetious in that regard. I think there's definitely an argument that United have got 5 or 6 world-class players in the squad too.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I've thought about this quite a lot.
Name them.
And this might be contentious, but this is just what I think. I think that David De Gea, I wouldn't swap for anyone, basically. I know he's not the completely finished article quite yet, but it's not far off. And exactly the same for Raphael. I also wouldn't swap him for anyone. And also there's a little bit of polish left to be applied, but he's getting very, very close. I think Nemanja Vidic is obviously a world-class centre-half. I think that to decide on the basis of the last 2 months that Rio has completely lost that status is probably a bit quick. The season will decide. I think last season, which is not that long ago, you would definitely see Rio as in that category. I mean, he might be on his way out of it pretty fast, but then again, he might come good. I don't know how anyone could say that Patrice Evra is not a world-class left-back, but a lot of people do. So it's bizarre to me. So to me, that entire first choice back five, although you don't play Rio and Vidic together, you've got options there which are in the world-class category. I think that Carrick is just short of that level because of what happens when he's, under physical pressure. But I think his use of the ball is up there, all that stuff about Carrick. And then Rooney and Van Persie, that's just not even a question, is it? You've also got a supporting cast of a very high calibre in some of the creative positions in terms of their level of talent, but I don't think any of the rest of them are in that category. So that's how many did I say? 5, 6?
About 8, I think. So here's an alternate view. I think United have 1.5 world-class players.
Okay.
And the one is Robin Van Persie, and he's only just in that. And maybe it's how we categorise what a world class is, but I think it's the elite of the elite, and it's a term thrown around. But if we talk about the very best of the best in world football, Robin Van Persie's in there because of his ability to finish, and that's really it. Because the rest of his game isn't up there with the very best in terms of his ability to dribble or beat players or any of that. But he's a world class finisher in every sense. Wayne Rooney is the half because he's certainly got the talent to be in the very elite. Doesn't always apply it. Maybe we'll get that from him this season, but he's always been a slightly inconsistent player. Goes in bursts, doesn't he? And the rest, I think there are too many questions. David De Gea is not there yet. He had a very poor game against Manchester City. I think he'll grow there. I think he's got absolutely everything. I mean, he actually had a fine game against Shaktar. And the rest, Fernand's, he's over the hill. I mean, his pace is gone. He's not in that category anymore. And same with Vidic. He's having to defend So he's a world-class defender, but the rest of his game is not in the same class. And Evra and Raphael's defensive qualities are not good enough to put them in the very top bracket. And I hope Raphael gets there. Evra never will, but he's an absolutely outstanding all-round attacking left-back. And Carrick, I'm afraid, just goes missing in the very biggest games, the very, very biggest games. He's been Rant's player of the season twice in a row, I think, and he absolutely fantastic for the last 2 years, That's not to say take anything away from Carrick, but is he in the same class as the very best, like Iniesta and Xavi and that lot in central midfield? No, he's not. So this is the alternate view that United have about 1.5 rather than 7, and that's probably what David Moyes is seeing, And if you went man for man, comparing United to Bayern Munich and Barca and Real Madrid, I don't think you'd put them that close.
I think the truth, as always, probably lies somewhere in between. I completely agree with you about Carrick, although didn't Rant's player of the season go to Robin Van Persie last season? And if it didn't, shouldn't we rejigger that so Robin Van Persie gets it? Because he was obviously player of the season at United last season.
Yeah, I may have made a mistake there, yes.
I kind of disagree about Raphael and Evra because the role they play is that of attacking fullbacks, and they do that as well as anyone. And especially Raphael, the defensive side is way better. And I don't know who's better than De Gea, really, to be honest, at the moment. Right now, today, here and now.
Probably Manuel Neuer is the one you'd say, And the other greats of European goalkeeper are on their way down. Buffon definitely on his way down. Casillas has hit rock bottom, hasn't he? Can't get a game for love and definitely not money at the moment. So look, De Gea is right up there, and he's getting better all the time. And I do hope that United don't have a defensive mare this season. It knocks his confidence, And of course, the other way of looking at that is if he does have a very good season, he's almost certainly going to join Barcelona next summer.
No! Oh, should we come on to Taco Gate, Ed?
Yes, Eric Steele, who's joined Derby, Steve's Derby this week, and good for him. I'm glad he got a job. I'm not sure Derby's really fitting of his status, but a fantastic interview with Eric Steele where he accused David De Gea, among other things, of eating too many tacos.
He said he had a real difficulty settling and that his attitude was a bit off early on, which is really interesting and kind of explains some of Fergie's more outrageous dropping of De Gea, that it was maybe partly a reflection of attitude rather than just performance, because that then does kind of make sense, and you could definitely argue that even though at the time I didn't understand what was going on, I think I remember saying on this very podcast, I'm sure there must be something going on here that we can't see. I kind of hoped that was the case, and it does seem that what was going on was he was having too many kips and eating too many tacos and spending too much time with his mummy and daddy because Eric Steele got him to move out of his parents' house. There have been people saying that actually, as a goalkeeping coach, you have a kind of privileged relationship with your players. So to reveal that much about them is maybe a little bit out of order, and I do wonder if it's a little bit of bitterness on Steele's part, having been released, having done such a fantastic job, because it did feel like of all the summer changes in coaching staff, that was the oddest.
Well, yes. He also said some positive things about David De Gea. He said he's a man with more focus than he's ever seen in any other young player, and playing in front of 76,000 fans didn't bother him one little bit, he's ice cold Dave and all that. And in fact, we saw that when he was at Atletico, thrown into the team in difficult circumstances with 2 other goalkeepers injured, and thrown in some very big games in the Europa League, and just looked the coolest man on the pitch. I remember that run when Atletico won the Europa League, thinking, my God, this kid's Edwin van der Sar. He's 18 going on 38. He was that cool, and you could see that. But I'm quite sure he found it very, very difficult joining United. He was away from his family or his girlfriend, away from home. A teenager, thrust into a huge spotlight with bad headlines and pressure and fans having to go at him. And, he probably did go off the rails a little bit. I think it's pretty understandable. But the fact that he's pulled it round, Steele didn't say he's still doing that, did he? He said it was when he first joined, and the fact that he pulled it around showed that he is a professional and as you say, on the way to being, if not quite world class yet, close to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, and you could see the affection shared between Steele and De Gea. I remember we talked about that on the show several times. You could see there was real love between the two of them, and you could see how proud Steele was of De Gea's improvements when he became, let's at least agree, the best goalkeeper in England.
Yeah, well, as voted by the PFA members, yeah. I made a facetious comment about him joining Barcelona. It's quite possible, I have to say. I'd put some heavy odds on it because Victor Valdez, as we know, is leaving. Pepe Reina was shipped out to Napoli, so I think they'll probably go for a Spanish goalkeeper, Barcelona, and De Gea would be the obvious choice. He's not going to join Real Madrid, is he? A point that Eric Steele made quite forcibly there. So it's likely to happen, I'd say.
It's just one of those things, like Moyes like letting Kagawa go to seed and then selling him. The idea of De Gea leaving us is like a genuinely slightly unreasonable emotional response to that, where I'm just like, la 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 la, don't want to hear it. You know, of course it makes a lot of sense, but I just really hope that when he is 38 going on 18, he's still United goalkeeper.
Yes, well, we'll see. You wouldn't really put him at fault for any of the goals that West Brom scored, particularly. You'd put a lot of other players at fault. The 5 or 6 players that didn't manage to get a tackle in for West Brom's first goal, and the players who didn't manage to get the ball away for West Brom's second. Fine goals though, weren't they, from the Baggies? And quite amazing that the winner, as it turned out, for the Baggies was scored by a kid who is earning about 1/100th of Wayne Rooney's wage.
850 quid a week the lad's on, which is not bad. I would definitely take 850 quid a week, but it's all relative, isn't it? Beautiful goals, both of them, but not if you're invested in Manchester United defending well, because it was just a complete shambles. And really, the players need to look at themselves a bit in that game. You know, we talked a lot about Moyes' failings, but he was also really, really badly let down by the playing staff in that game. The team that he put out, whilst a pretty eccentric one, should have had enough in it to do a better job than they did. Although I do think the change at half-time was just almost inexplicable, because it's not like Shinji was having a bad game, right?
Well, no, he wasn't. I mean, I think he was struggling to impose himself on the game, but it's not that surprising that he was struggling to impose himself on the game when you think about putting a playmaker on the left wing. There's very few that managed to make a career of that. Zidane is the obvious one, but I don't think anyone's saying that Shinji is in Zidane's class just yet. Almost certainly never will be, but just not going to get the best out of him. And yeah, so it was a slightly odd substitution. The other change to bring Fellaini on after, just over an hour or so for Anderson wasn't a surprise. Anderson had a stinker, and then of course Van Persie came on after an hour for Hernandez when United were trying to make something of the game. Didn't work though, did it? Because the winner came, 5 minutes later or something.
No, and I think it's too early to judge Fellaini's United career, but West Brom game, City game, Shakhtar game, none of those good for old fellas.
No, nice turn and low cross to set up United's goal against Shakhtar.
Well, he crossed it to exactly where the defender was, and the defender then knocked it on to Welbeck. So,
but we'll give him some credit.
Right.
We'll give him some credit for controlling the ball and turning and getting past the defender to get the cross in. I think that was all right. In those offensive positions, he's done well. Look at the goals he scored against United a couple of seasons ago. That was Fellaini actually working well in the box. I think it's the rest of his game that really worries me. I mean, he's so safe with his passing now. He's obviously been listening to the Rantcast when I accused him of giving the ball away 25% of the time, because historically that's what he does. He's not doing that at the moment because he's being very, very safe with it. And he doesn't make a tackle. He doesn't get in the right defensive positions. His passing is safe. And nothing more than that. He's slow, isn't he? Slow.
There was
and he costs way too much. But apart from that, he's a great player.
There was hashtag things that are faster than Marouane Fellaini on Twitter today, and there were some very good ones at BigRed_M saying his internet connection. Someone else pointing out the Grand Theft Auto Online servers were quicker. I went with David Moyes bringing Shinji Kagawa on for Marouane Fellaini. Hashtag things that are faster than Marouane Fellaini. Yeah, he was slow. I mean, he was very involved in play.
He is. He wants the ball a lot, and he actually gets into good passing positions, right? So, 2 things I like about him. He's always available because he's getting into the right positions to receive the ball, and he does make things happen in the box when he gets there. I mean, he's not playing in that kind of position at the moment. The rest of it, I have to say, I'm not impressed. Got to admit it, I really want him to do well. I wasn't impressed with him when he played at Everton, so of course, maybe I've got some blinkers on here, but I'm waiting for it to happen. I'm waiting for £27.5 million worth of talent to come out.
He did not give the ball away a lot in that game, but nor did he make particularly effective use of the ball. And I think most telling was his the paucity of his defensive contributions, actually. You know, he was just breezed past time and time again, and people talk about his physical presence, and I really think what they're talking about is his physical presence when the ball's in the air, and that really is effective. You know, he does change the game when when there's a hoofball either way. It's good for United to have Fellaini in the side. It's just there's a few more hoofballs than we'd all like to see in going up United's end when he's in the side. But yeah, a worrying sign so far, but very early days, no pre-season with the players, doesn't know any of the players yet, must be intimidated a little bit by the size of his own transfer fee, which is obviously not his fault, and the task of coming and being a Manchester United player, so definitely prepared to cut him some slack and hope that he develops into more impressive performances in the future. Much like the man that brought him, frankly.
Yeah, one successful tackle all game against Shaktar. Which is, says a lot, and gave the ball away 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times in 40 odd passes. So look, it's an okay performance, but nothing more than that. Just on the basis of statistics.
But I think it was
5
less...
aerial duels. There you go. That's what he's about.
Yeah, it was less than an okay performance, actually, in real life. So the Shakhtar game then, I don't know. Definitely, we didn't lose in Shakhtar away, and I thought we were going to. I predicted 1-1 on the Rantcast last time.
First English club to get a point. Not bad. I mean,
the thing is, no, I think Fulham got a point in the UEFA Cup. So we're now up there with Roy Hodgson's Fulham, just like our performances look like Roy Hodgson's teams. But no, we both predicted, I think, 1-1 on the podcast last week, but my prediction was kind of revised by the depression that set in following the West Brom game. Football depression, not real life depression. And I really thought that we were on a pretty serious hiding to a potentially embarrassing result, but actually the very, very conservative selection, and more than selection, the thoroughly conservative tactics during the game. It was a conservative strategy and then conservative tactics, right? Both.
It was a strategy of control, they will not pass, which of course Ferguson has adopted too in recent years. So we can't say that Moyes is the only Manchester United manager to do this, but it was containment. There's 3 in midfield, Danny Welbeck sort of behind Robin van Persie and Antonio Valencia out on the right. It gave it a kind of lopsided performance, but in reality, all it really meant was that as United lost the ball, there were 5 players across midfield to fully protect the back 4, and United were about not losing. And that looked okay in the first half, actually. United kept the ball okay, kept the shape very, very well, and looked to, on a very rare occasion, try and break. It just wasn't enough, and I think that kind of conservatism will, not work out in the end. Look at the best sides in Europe. It's very, very rare that purely defensive sides win the Champions League these days. Chelsea did it, and it was a miracle, wasn't it?
Yeah, literally. I mean, not literally. That's kind of the wrong word. It was so extravagantly fortunate that Chelsea won that tournament, because... Yeah,
the rest of the winners recently, Bayern Munich, fantastic attacking side, especially on the break. Barcelona a few times, you know what they're all about. You win when you're bold in this tournament, because it's a cup tournament, and a few sides now and again have managed to pull off winning it in a negative fashion. That's the only way that United can win it this season, not offensively, and I don't think Moyes is brave enough to do that. Interesting, I talked about Ferguson coming out of the media this week. He gave some interviews to public radio in the States and Sirius XM, his favourite station. He said, one thing he always told his players was, in the last 15 minutes, throw the kitchen sink. I don't think David Moyes is telling his players that, not when, after 89 minutes, he's substituting your striker for a defender.
I was thinking about Fergie, and I was thinking about what you said last week, and what we all know, that he's got increasingly conservative in Europe. He had got increasingly conservative in Europe. But I was also thinking, in that last 10 minutes, I think Fergie would have been a bit more bold, because I do think that they were there for the taking on the counter, and that you could have added significantly to the counter-attacking without suffering at all defensively. If you put Kagawa on instead of Giggs for Fellaini, you're not losing anything defensively. You're not losing anything in terms of ball retention. It's Ryan Giggs. He came on, fell over, gave the ball away. He really had a bit of a mare. And actually, I think you bring Kagawa on to play properly numbers. It's never going to happen. Just got to drop it. Just got to pretend we don't have him in the squad, because it's just upsetting otherwise. But yeah, that last 10 minutes, especially after they scored, United were just desperately clinging on, weren't they?
Well, for most of the second half, to be honest. I mean, it was a very, very negative strategy. I'm not going to make a statistical argument, but one shot on target in the entire game, and that was Welbeck's shot. You wonder if the defender hadn't made a complete hash of that, whether United would have got a shot on target at all. And this is Shakhtar. They're a middling side in Europe. OK, they've got a good home record, and a few years back they did make the quarterfinals. But they lost two of their very best players in the summer for big, big money. They've tried to integrate some new players. Bernard was a big purchase over the summer, came on as a late substitute. They've got a ton of Brazilians, of course. It's kind of their strategy at the moment. They are not one of Europe's top sides. Just because it's a long flight away doesn't mean they're one of Europe's top sides.
No, but if you look at their record there, they do have a fairly exceptional record at home in Europe, don't they? That is a very tricky fixture. It really is, because
but our approach to it was to be extremely negative.
Yeah, of course.
42% possession, one shot at goal.
No, I mean, it was miserable. It was miserable, especially the second half, because the first half it was like, oh, this is kind of enjoyable, functional defending, and we got the goal, and it all looked all right. It looked like they didn't really actually worry us too much in that first half, but something did need to change in the second half. We needed to try and impose ourselves on that game a little bit more, and we just either didn't have the resources or the tactics or the playing staff to do it. The beginning of the season is, I think, at the lower end of what any of us would have expected, right? This is the kind of playing out in the kind of, so far, somewhat approaching the worst case scenario, really, of Moyes comes in, players stop looking like they know what they're doing, the tactics go to kind of really functional defensive football, loads more long balls than we were getting, players' body language looking a bit rough, Wayne Rooney being made captain. These are all the things. Because, captain in the League Cup side, I didn't even mention that about the West Brom game, retained the armband. So, it's all very well to give him the captaincy against Liverpool in the League Cup, but at Old Trafford, in a league game, Wayne Rooney as captain, then ManUnited.com banging on about Bobby Charlton saying he's the type of player all fans would want. It's like, sorry, Sir Bobby, he absolutely is not the type of player that all fans would want, because we'd all want players that want to be at the club.
Yeah, so Bobby's towing the party line there, right? I mean, it does come to something when the sycophancy about Wayne Rooney has to go right to the top. Yeah, I mean, is he our saviour? God help us. It's beginning to sound very negative, but and I really don't want it to be like that, but it's been a tough start. It's been a really tough start. United are not getting good results, and they're playing pretty bad football as well. And that's just, I'm afraid that's just an observation. Now, maybe in time, Moyes will find his own confidence, and he'll find the confidence to play more expansive football. Maybe he'll learn about what the United job's all about. That's what Gary Neville said would happen. He said that the job would manage him rather than him managing the job, and it's not happened so far. I feel like we're only getting 50% of Moyes, because it's he's not quite a rabbit in the headlights, but he's not far off it, is he? And I hope there's much more to come from him, and United will end up playing creative attacking football one day. I don't have a lot of confidence in that, just because of history. History tells me this is how David Moyes sides play. Right? Everton's super, super functional, quite physical, sometimes direct, very direct. And he managed to get the best out of players because of that. It's a whole other challenge for Moyes now. And at the moment, he's struggling a little bit. But, we're less than a third away through the season. So plenty of time for him to turn it around. But it doesn't look good right now.
No, at Paul Gurning1 wrote a really lovely piece on his blog, which is excellent, actually. Worth following him on Twitter. And he wrote a really nice piece about comparing David Moyes' start to De Gea's start, actually. And I think there was some. We mentioned De Gea's early time at United earlier today, and there were some real nice parallels in that of a player, a guy that looks like he's got a rabbit in the headlights vibe and has lost the best of himself, but hopefully in time he'll get some of that back. And even if his tendencies are a bit conservative, hopefully, if that does translate into a more functional version of that, rather than the kind of dysfunctional conservatism that we've got in the moment, that won't be quite so bad, so long as he does incorporate a bit of attacking play into the sides, which he did at Everton. They weren't dreadful to watch all the time, Everton. They were just dreadful to watch mostly whenever they played anyone good. And that's what we've got to hope doesn't happen forever at United, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, but when you're going away to a middling European side and you're playing like that, You know, it's not that ambitious, is it?
No, it's not. But it is just very early days. You know, it is very bad so far. That's the truth of it. It's awful so far. But this is the emphasis on that. It needs to go on the so far because, you know, it's a difficult job that he's trying to do, and he's doing a poor job of it in the press, on the pitch, presumably in the training ground, because that's what then translates to on the pitch. But hopefully that won't be the case for, you know, the rest of the season, and by Christmas he'll have pulled it together. Where we talked last week about having a more favourable run of fixtures, but we started that somewhat catastrophically. But you would think it cannot continue to be this bad, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd have to hope. You'd have to hope that it won't be. There's some things that you need to know about David Moyes. His sides do play in a certain way, and he has a defence-first mentality, and that's the kind of most worrying piece, you know, when United's defending as an entire unit, not just individual players, is falling apart. You've got to wonder whether Moyes is getting his message across at all, and the fact that there seemed such a lacklustre performance from some of the players, and we talked about that against City as well, you know, really worries me, really worries me that the players aren't performing for him, you know. But hey, these are observations in the here and now. It doesn't mean like it'll be this way forever. This is certainly not an observation about United's empire crumbling or anything like that. Alan Hansen wrote a piece for The Telegraph this week saying United mirrored Liverpool in the early 90s. It's a bit too early to say that. You know, bit too early. But the January transfer window will be key, and interesting that Ed Woodward has been briefing the press this week, as he is wont to do. He loves a little lunch with the members of the Fourth Estate, doesn't he? And been putting it about a bit that United will be spending £100 million or more. We've heard this one before, haven't we, Paul?
When that started, it's like immediately in the aftermath of the West Brom game. It's all fine. We'll spend £100 million in January, honest. A piece of the Times, I think on Monday, saying that sorry, I try and retain a straight face while I say this. Manchester United are monitoring Andreas. Nope, I can't. literally can't get through with a straight face. Monitoring Andres Iniesta's situation at Bus.
So Paul's lost the run of himself. I'll finish that. Yeah, piece in Time saying United are monitoring Andres Iniesta's situation. He hasn't signed a new contract. There's also the piece in the Times that you didn't quite spot, which said that Ed and Paul from the Rantcast will also be taking over at United, and it'll be a double act like Sillett and whatever his name was for Coventry City back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the hardest I've laughed all week when I heard that, just because it's the Fabregas situation, only like 100 times more insane, you know, like, they're monitoring the situation with Iniesta at Barcelona. Have we finished monitoring? Yeah, it turns out Andres Iniesta's staying at Barcelona. What a shocking outcome that was. Good job you were monitoring it.
Hey, look, there's a job lot of tacos going, and Edward was about to offer them for Lionel Messi.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not prepared to start talking about the January transfer window yet in earnest, because I have not got over the August transfer window yet. I need a couple of months. It's like, you know, it's like stuff being out in Christmas already in shops, right? You could buy Christmas puddings in Asda at the moment, and this is the same thing. We should not be talking about the January transfer window until the latter half of December at the earliest.
You shop in Asda? I thought you were a Waitrose man myself.
Most certainly not, no. I'm often found at Asda Quizlet. Alright, things that are very exciting on the other hand, we have an awesome competition prize to give away, 2 hats from at Rosso Bianco 1878, Rosso Bianco Nero, fantastic hats to give away, and we got loads and loads of entries, and lots of them were brilliant, so I can only apologise to those of you who didn't win. Honourable mentions to at Craig English 92, who says he would like to meet RVP in a hat because I heard he can do a mean hat trick. Good. I like an extremely blunt pun. Well, not really a pun, it's just a joke. Wordplay. At Matt Lewis 6 says, I'd like to see Bootner in a Kangol flat cap because whilst he's good fun to have around, you'd worry if he was your only option. Very good point. Well made. At Liz Worsley with the honourable mention, Phil Jones in an Indiana Jones hat complete with whip to see him gurn as he swings across Old Trafford's pitch. Yeah, that would be a beautiful sight to behold. This one is terribly wrong and gets an honourable mention because it's too violent for it to win the prize. But at DJT68 says, I'd like to meet Vidic wearing Ashley Young's head as a hat.
Nice, I didn't spot that one. I quite like that. Can we change our winners, please?
No violence allowed on the Rantcast. The 2 winners, at Nasha_Hassan, says he'd like to meet Fellaini in a Fellaini wig. I know it's not exactly a hat, but it's still a great idea. You're right, it is a great idea. I too would like to see that. At Dom McDowell also winning the other hat that we have to give away. I'd like to see Wayne Rooney in a Bobby Charlton-style comb-over hat. That way I might trick myself into loving him again. I think we'd all like that to happen.
Very good. Well, if you didn't win, go and buy a Rosso Bianconero hat, if you can, because I tried several times to buy one, I couldn't, but it looks like they are available now, and genuine limited edition. I do think they do some nice stuff, and they haven't paid me to say that either.
Except in hats, we should say.
Well, that's it. I've got a job lot. I'm going to be swimming in hats. I will be bathing in hats.
All right, so talking of prize winners, the 11 people that look like they've won a competition to play for Manchester United on Saturday evening against Sunderland at Old Trafford, right?
So the competition's on Saturday evening. This is Britain's Got Footballers.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the United First 11 resembles at the moment.
The chap with that silly wig won the prize, didn't he? And will Marrow and Fellaini play against Sunderland? He probably will, actually, because I think Moyes will want to integrate him. And can United get 3 points against managerless Sunderland? Got to.
It's away. I do apologise. It's under the lights at the Stadium of Light.
It is. It's an evening game at the Stadium of Light, and not going there to try and win a title this time, thankfully. We ought to be going there to spank managerless Sunderland silly, shouldn't we?
Managerless Sunderland is definitely a more fearsome opposition than Paolo Di Canio managed Sunderland, a team which has been significantly improved. Talk about a manager making a difference to a side. When you get rid of him and they look like, actually, wait a minute, they're all quite good at football again. You know, Moyes' start's been a bit ropey, and the way he's handled the PR has not exactly been ideal, and perhaps has had something of a knock-on effect on the players, but that's nothing compared to the absolute horror show that was Paolo Di Canio's reign at Sunderland. I've never been more convinced that a manager should be given the sack instantly as I was with Di Canio.
Yeah, he should have been given the sack at the end of the season. He was brought in as an impact manager. He did his job. Sunderland stayed up, and then they should have got rid of him. I mean, he's a nut job, right? Crazy, lunatic, lost the plot, space cowboy, and no place in the Premier League at all. That, and he's a fascist, of course.
Yeah, it doesn't help, does it? I mean, I've long argued that there's a link between mental illness and extreme right-wing politics. I think Di Canio is a fine example of that. Just thoroughly depressing for all concerned. And of course, John O'Shea. We don't like to imagine that John O'Shea's been suffering under the cruel hand of Di Canio, do we? He's one of the few players that managed to keep his job under Di Canio.
Oh, he's a good, honest pro, isn't he, O'Shea? He's not playing very well, but he's a good, honest pro.
He's never played very well. He had one good season in his whole career.
Yeah.
I know that's travesty. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry to a load of specific people. You all know who you are. But John O'Shea, he was never good enough for United, except for that one season. But we love him, right? He's a lovable utility player.
Yeah, he is, and he said, look, for a player with limited talent, he's had a fantastic career. 10 years at the very top with United. He's going to stretch his Premier League career out well into a second decade, isn't he? And for someone who's not the most talented player, he's done very, very well for himself. So you can't begrudge him any of that, I guess.
No, he's one of the most decorated footballers of all time, John O'Shea.
Yeah.
In terms of stuff he's won. It's quite a thought, though, really, when you think about it, isn't it?
It is quite a thought, yeah. Well, there you go. If your life's, not going so well at the moment, just think of John O'Shea. Coining it in for being mediocre, which, much like most of the United squad at the moment, I suppose, No, I kid you not. It's all of the United squad.
Sunderland squad, it's difficult to know where they stand, really, because obviously Di Canio made wholesale changes in conjunction with the director of football, loads and loads of new players in, and they just really, really struggled terribly to play underneath him, which is not really a surprise, since the first sign of any mistakes would have him looking for Jeff Shreves to slate you for 20 minutes. That's not happening now. Kevin Ball in charge on an interim basis, and they've definitely got players that can do damage. There's no easy games in the Premier League, especially now that we've stopped being any good. This will be more of a test than it would have been this time last season, let's say.
Well, it's a test because United aren't playing very well, and Sunderland have had a short-term boost, but they're not a very good side, right? So let's not kid ourselves that they're suddenly going to challenge for anything other than 19th place or 17th place, whatever it is. 19th place, they might struggle to get there at the moment, but United should go out there and turn them over. But confidence is clearly short, and I think it'll be interesting to see Moyes' tactics. Rooney, I suspect, will be back, and Rooney and Van Persie will play together, but does he set up the rest of the team to be quite cautious? So is it Carrick and Fellaini? Who does he play in the wide positions? That's a really interesting one. Or does he go for it and play some attacking players? Does Zaha and Nani start rather than Young and Giggs?
No, Zaha does not start. Did you see what happened this week with Zaha? What presumably started as a joke that Zaha was not playing in the side because he had, let's just say, made very good friends with David Moyes' daughter. I assume that somebody just started that as a joke, but it got to the point where it was being taken seriously as like a serious rumour, and then Wilf put a stop to all that by tweeting silly rumours, #childish.
Yes, didn't deny it though, did he?
I thought of you when he did it. I thought Ed's going to say that's not a denial.
Yeah, naughty boy. Last time a member of the United staff fraternised with someone he shouldn't, the manager got sacked. Wow,
that's a gap in my Manchester United folklore now. I didn't realise that's why the Doc had lost his job. Presumably that's not happening, being as it's a silly rumour, #childish. I don't think we're going to see Zaha. It's interesting because he played a lot in pre-season and he looked good, and it did look like he might be at least on the fringes, but he's not even on the fringes of the squad, is he?
No, Moyes has said a few times he's waiting for him to develop, so I wonder what's going on there. Maybe he's not quite settled in at the club properly, and there was a lot of talk about as soon as he signed his contract with United, he turned up at the Crystal Palace training ground in a Mercedes the next day. Maybe his attitude isn't quite right.
Roy Keane would not have liked that.
Roy Keane would certainly not have liked that. Maybe that's it. United are lacking a Roy Keane in the squad at the moment.
And have been for however long it is since Roy Keane left.
Yeah, 8 years.
Yeah. How many was he replaceable, to be fair? So the fact that it's taken us 8 years and we still haven't replaced him is not particularly surprising.
No, it's not. And we haven't been replaced as podcast pundits either. Amazing that this has not happened. But we are still doing it, 164 shows in.
It's ridiculous. We've got to stop eventually.
And one of our traditions is to predict the score at the weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't predict a Sunderland win over United. That's just... Is that what it's come to? I've been disheartened to the... No, we're going to turn it around. We're going to scrape a 2-1.
There's confidence for you. Yeah, I think United will win comfortably. Sunderland are pretty rubbish, so I'm going to go for a 3-0 United win. Tiki-taka, expansive football all the way.
Wow! Are you sure that you're talking about Manchester United, right?
Yes.
Okay,
no, 3-0 United
fine,
win.
good.
I think Fellaini will score because I think the old hoofball will work up at the Stadium of Light.
Yeah, good. All right, excellent. I think you might be right. I'm also going to predict that in the further traditions of the Rantcast, there won't be a podcast next week because of the stupid international break, but we'll be back before the Southampton game to look back on the stupid international break and preview the week's fixtures after that. And let's hope that things are looking a bit rosier then as well. They might, because it's not all doom and gloom yet. It's only football and it's early days. It's all going to turn around. It'll all be fine.
No, it won't. Doom!
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.